Hello and welcome to the What's New in Office 365 webinar series from AvePoint and Combined Knowledge. My name is Chris Casangina and welcome to my session on going live with Office 365, Adoption Stories. Just a little introduction from myself before we go any further. So my name is Chris Casangina. I've got a fairly unique name, so you'll probably find me on LinkedIn fairly easily. And my contact email address is chris.casangina@combined-knowledge.com. As I mentioned, I'm a SharePoint specialist and Office 365 specialist working for Combined Knowledge. I focus on end user training for the company, not only delivering training, but also working on projects in delivering Office 365 and SharePoint capabilities to businesses. I've also had quite a lot of work put into our products that we sell from Combined Knowledge, such as our Support Plus, Office Plus, and Training Plus products. I'm also the technical editor for Penny and Olga's SharePoint 2013 and 2016 step-by-step books. And you might have seen me on various communities or conferences that we have around in the UK, such as the SharePoint user group, and also the international SharePoint conferences and SharePoint evolution conferences. As you can see, during my spare time, during my business time, I'm always sort of wrapped up in Microsoft Office products. But outside of work, I do get up to other things as well. So I thought I'd put a picture in there that wasn't related to Microsoft products. So I've got my oil painting of my girlfriend there, who's currently, she plays roller derby. So I thought I'd try out a little bit of oil painting on one of the photos that I've took. It came out quite well. This was quite an early draft of the painting, but it's something that I'm getting into. And as you can tell from this photo as well, we like to go for nice long walks as well. So this is our dog Dottie and my girlfriend Laura, and we're just out on the top of one of the mountains in Wales. So that was a good day out. So that's a little bit about myself, just so you know a little bit about me as we go through this training session today. And like I said, I'm contactable after the session as well. So if you have any queries after the session, do feel free to get into contact with myself or any of my colleagues at Combined Knowledge. So this is an adoption story. Now it says stories on the title. Basically, it's been cut down to story. I have lots of adoption stories for Office 365. However, we only have an hour, and one of the best stories I have to tell might even take up to an hour in duration. So what I decided to do is scrub the title immediately, make it adoption story, and this gives me about sort of 45 minutes to sort of talk about my story about Office 365 and how a business that we worked alongside went live with the product. So we'll be talking about businesses in the cloud. So this is something that you're probably quite familiar with. A lot of offices talking about, hey, we're going to Office 365, we're migrating. And you might be thinking, well, why? What's wrong with our current services? And, you know, what's better up in the cloud? So let's try and ask and answer some of those questions during this session. And like anything, if we change anything that the business does at its core, there's going to be repercussions, there's going to be challenges. So we'll talk about what kind of challenges any kind of implementation of a roll into the cloud will take upon a company. And that's when we'll introduce our case study. Just to let you know that the case study in particular for this session is under a non-disclosure agreement. And for that reason, the company are happy for us to explain what happened on the project, but not to specify which company it is specifically. So as we go through our case study, we'll let you know a little bit about the company, sort of numbers, size, geographical location, but not the actual name of the company in particular. We'll then talk about how Combined Knowledge worked alongside this particular company to deliver Office 365 to their organization. So we talk about the master plan, what we thought out to be the best way to deliver Office 365 to an organization. And that's probably what you're here for. You want to hear what that master plan was. How did they have so much success, and how do we get the same sort of success for yourselves? You may already be in Office 365. You might have already got good adoption from it, but you still might be interested in how the businesses are getting on the product, what kind of challenges they faced and how they mitigated certain challenges. So this isn't just for people who haven't gone live yet. This is very valuable for people who have gone live as well. We'll talk about how we delivered this experience. So the delivery is very important. We'll talk about step by step how we broke down the project and what we delivered to the individual users in the organization. And after we delivered this experience, this adoption of Office 365, we're going to talk about what kind of feedback we got from the members of staff. And we've, again, just for privacy concerns, just eliminated some of the names and signatures on some of the feedback just to make sure, obviously, we stick to that NDA. So we'll talk about the success of the early adopters in the business, so the people who went live with the product first, and then we'll talk about how the rest of the business coped with the go live of the product. And then we'll talk about how this company managed future updates. So remember, Office 365 is a changing platform. At the moment, I'm currently rewriting Combined Knowledge's SharePoint online course because it's so different now than it was a few months ago. So that warrants me going back in and rewriting the courseware. And for any of you who are out there who handle the adoption of products, it's probably a little bit of a sort of hair-raising moment to be in when you realize, hey, we've adopted a product that's forever changing. How do we keep that momentum? There are answers to those questions. We'll discover those as we go through the session today. You've probably been watching this clock for a while. The last time I delivered this session, it was down in London in Paddington, and I had a slot between 8:15 and 9:30 to deliver this session. Believe it or not, I had lost quite a lot of the time on that session, but this little clock is actually 100% irrelevant, but it's left on there because it's very eye-catching, but we'll move away from it just now, and we'll focus on basically our first question of the day, why go to the cloud? Now, I've actually got quite an ingrained IT background. I used to work for a retail company in the UK on an IT service desk for about, I think about 2.5 years. So 2.5 years on a service desk, you hear it all. You know, someone's come back from holiday, they've forgotten their password, someone's locked themselves in the server room, all kinds of interesting stuff you get to hear about. But one thing we know is that IT doesn't really get the business any money. It's a known cost to the business. We know that. You have to buy servers, you have to buy software, licenses, equipment, you've got to set up that equipment, you have to pay for services. It is a big cost to the business. But as a business becomes more and more modern, of course, it's more and more essential, but businesses are always battling with costs. Because we know in IT, and for those of you who might be aware of IT infrastructure, basically it needs to be resilient, doesn't it? I mean, if you come into work and your emails aren't working, who do you call IT? And you say, why aren't they working? And say, oh, you know, there's a rodent in the server room, it's eaten through some of the wires. And you say, well, why isn't there a backup? Well, there normally is. We need to be resilient, and resilient in IT standards means that we have to have an on-site failover. So one server goes kaput, another server kicks in, and we don't even notice the difference. That's the kind of ideal kind of service we want. We want, you know, services all the time. For businesses that might go a step further, if they had a full server room outage, they've actually got these specialized lorries. I don't know if any of you have seen Die Hard 4. I know it's a weird thing to say. Has anyone seen Die Hard 4? But Die Hard 4 is this, obviously a Die Hard film with Bruce Willis in it, but it has this mobile server lorry, and it's just basically a lorry with some seats in it and lots of servers, and the villain takes control of all of the sort of traffic lights and stuff in the city, and it's all very entertaining. But in the real world, I've worked in disaster recovery situations where businesses purchase the services of a remote lorry that wheels itself into the company's car park. The IT team frantically move their servers over to this lorry, and the business can continue from this lorry. It's a backup lorry. It's very exciting. It's just another thing, but another, obviously, a cost that's associated with working in IT. One of the more logical things to do is to have an off-site failover, okay? So you have your server rack in another server room, in another site. Maybe it's owned by your business, maybe it's owned by a third party like Rackspace. But at the end of the day, you're buying servers, you're trying to make sure they're fast, that's money. You've got a backup of that server, that's money. You've got a failover of that server, that's money as well. And you've got to maintain all of those servers. So if something breaks, you get again an engineer out to fix it, or you have to have a contract in place for the repair. And you have to upgrade those servers because software gets more and more demanding. And then you've also got these capacity managers, those guys that say you can't store all of that information there. Did you know the hard drives don't grow on trees? They're these kind of guys that are constantly keeping an eye on how much growth there is in the business. Files are getting bigger. Someone said to me, I've got a 200 megabyte Excel file. I was just saying, what on earth is in that file? He almost turned it into a database. It was that large. But capacity management means that bigger and bigger files are ending up present in businesses. Things like AutoCAD drawings can be quite large. So we have to have the space for this information. So if you want to be resilient in disasters such as this, you need to spend the money to make sure you are resilient in these particular areas. It's one of my favorite clips from the series, and you've probably seen that coming up in a lot of social media feeds more recently, but I thought it was quite well placed in regards to disasters and IT infrastructure. So what's next? Well, as well as IT being rather a cost to the business, there are other reasons why businesses are starting to reassess their IT infrastructure. And it's not for the total focus of the IT department. It's actually related to cultural changes that we're seeing across organizations around the world. So first of all, flexible hours. A lot of people come into work early, they leave work early. Those kind of flexibilities mean that they might have to do some of their work from home, or they might potentially need to have their services to do their work available even while the office is closed, so early on in the morning that they can get some work done before they get into the office, or maybe they leave the office quite late but they've still got work to do, they can still pick up that work from home. Problem is that normally requires some kind of VPN token to get you back into the office again. So you need some sort of technology to get your systems connected to the office, even if you're external. A lot of people work from home. So a lot of businesses actually get more skilled workers by allowing them to work from home. It's very rare that if you're looking for a specialist, there'll be one right on your doorstep. But if you allow them to work from home, it's easier to recruit them because they can work from wherever they like in the world technically, but probably more local than that. But they can provide their skills and expertise by working from home just as they can working from the office. There's also more and more devices. A cultural change means that a while ago, one of our CEOs of the company comes into the IT desk and says, hey, I've got an iPad. And this is when iPads were quite new. And he says, I've got an iPad. I want it to work with my email. I want it to work with the business systems. I saw my IT service development manager with his hands in his head trying to get this iPad to work with the business. Luckily, technology is very much evolved to working with lots of IT systems, but still, it's still quite difficult to make sure that these devices work with everything unless it's kind of connecting to web-based services. So more devices are coming into the business. People are bringing in personal devices. They bring their own phone in and say, I'd like this to work. And there's also modern ways of working as well. You might hear people saying, oh, I shared a file with an external party. There's less red tape. Businesses need to actively collaborate with other organizations, and reducing red tape means that you're removing barriers that allow people to work to resolutions faster. We get faster collaboration with other companies as mentioned, and we can also be secure where necessary. If we have particular working areas for businesses that are more widely available, like an extranet, but private information that's kept on our intranet is separate to that, we can have more modern ways of working where we can work collaboratively, externally, but also privately, internally as well. There's also a culture change of the demand for the latest tools. You ever been sat with your head in your hands looking at Microsoft Word 2007 and thinking, this is 10 years old now? It is potentially 10 years old. But even if it is Office 2007, some people want the latest and greatest tools. They might be watching Office 365 Microsoft Mechanics on YouTube and they're thinking, hey, this is really cool. They've just added this cool chart to Excel that shows maps. but we're using an old version of Excel and we don't get that. So there's lots of culture changes that are demanding that people want the latest solutions because they're seeing online how good the latest tools are. This little picture here was just meant to represent my girlfriend because she works from home. She's currently working from home right now. I'm not in the slightest jealous at all. So we've got cost from IT and we've got cultural changes in organizations. How do we actually mitigate things like this? Well, a lot of people are saying we're going to the cloud. There's a great t-shirt that I see which says there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer. And that's quite right, really, because technically there is no magical cloud up there in the sky that delivers all these services. It's basically organizations providing their services, their IT infrastructure through websites for the other businesses to consume. The reason that cloud services are incredibly popular is that they have the latest and greatest updates. Web services are easier to maintain and keep up to date than software deployments. So if you install some software on someone's computer and then they go away from the business, it's hard to keep them up to date. However, with something like a cloud-based service, they're always connecting to the most up-to-date experience. And those experiences allow for growth and flexibility. If, for example, an organization was to expand and create a new department, it wouldn't be a big ask to use cloud services to create a location for that team to work. It's very easy to do it. So growth and flexibility is incredibly easy in the cloud because you just pay for the space you need. And if you grow, you just pay for more space that you require. You've also got the disaster recovery element down as well. So if you're hosting your content in the cloud, if your business starts putting content in the cloud, if that service goes down, another service is taking its place. I mean, you're basically connecting to one data center. If a fail happens in one of those servers, there's several other servers in the data center that will keep you up. If the whole data center goes down, there's another data center to keep you going. So disaster recovery is there. It also reduces hardware costs. You're not buying new servers, you're not paying to expand or maintain them, you're not paying to repair them. So going to the cloud makes a financial benefit as well. This also gives you the opportunity, if you're based in multiple offices, you can collaborate on a single tenant. So all offices subscribe to the same cloud service. It means that you can all work from the same location. And technically, you can work from anywhere. Internet required, of course, but if you wanted to work on a surfboard, if you could get a Wi-Fi or 3G or 4G connection, you could work on a surfboard all day if you wanted to. I know my colleague Rob would absolutely love working on a surfboard all day, so that one goes out to Rob. There's also less emailing of files. If you're in a cloud service, quite a lot of the time you're trying to email and bind together lots of people into a conversation. Well, actually, you can have conversations in cloud services that are more visible. And you can also reduce the requirement for all of these bulky file attachments by having a single centralized location to store your files and then reference those files in emails so that you're not cluttering up your mailbox with large attachments. And again, you've got the power of having a single file, so that if you send an email out to several people, they're all looking at the same file. And if you update that file, they still see the most up-to-date version of that file. So it makes more sense to use the cloud for things like email attachments. There's also security enhanced options. So you can make things more secure, and you can even control mobile apps that people might use in conjunction with cloud services as well, to make sure that mobile phones and tablets connecting to these cloud services are just as secure as computers are. And you might be a business that's in competition with other businesses around the world. Imagine thinking that you need some sort of business intelligence capabilities. Well, you could actually just go to the cloud service provider and say, would like to subscribe to this solution. No setup, no installation. You say we want to be competitive with another business. You find a tool, you research, you find it's the right one, you activate it. No difficulty, you just get that service and you use it for as long as you need to. And one last thing, and going out to some of our friends at the Carbon Trust, it lowers your carbon footprint as well. If you don't have a server room and potentially a ton of air conditioning trying to keep that server room cool, you're going to save on electricity and other costs as well. So going to the cloud has not only financial benefits, but also other collaborative aspects that benefit us as well. So that's why so many businesses are looking at cloud services, or maybe a hybrid approach where they go in half and half with their on-premises and cloud-based services. So why don't we just start? Why don't we just go to the cloud? Well, actually, there are challenges. And as we'd expect, if anyone ever gives me something to do, I pick at it and I try and find out exactly everything about what I need to do and what difficulties are. I even can make up things that might go wrong that will never go wrong, but it's challenges that we face when we go live with these particular processes. A business is basically full of people. You can't judge everyone to be the same. They all have different skills. People who come on our training courses, some of them have been using Office 365 for a couple of years. Some of them have never looked at it before. And every single one of these students that come on our training courses have different needs. So some might need to just understand the basics. Others need to create a specific business solution. So you can't just basically take the same approach with absolutely everyone in the business when you go live with something like Office 365. And to potentially, they may not welcome change. If the business is functioning as it currently is, and if all it's going to do is save cost, why would people be excited about trying to learn a whole new product to go live with and change their working practices? We need to almost sell it to those people. We want to make sure that there's more to offer them than what they have at the moment. So again, people would dig their heels in, they may not welcome the change. So going to the cloud is not a light switch. You don't just fire it up one day and say to people, you're now in Office 365, get going. It will impact many employees in the business. And basically many positives, as many positives as this can offer for the organization, it will pose many challenges. So you might think in your head, this will offer the business so much more, but it's getting people to use that functionality and getting them to get to that so much more, which may benefit them in the future, but they might be struggling with when you go live. So I guess the question is, how do we approach something so large? Well, one of the things that we find key to any project, and if you've done a project yourself, it might be what we call the early adopters, the people that are normally volunteers, people that are in the business that are aware of what you're trying to achieve, and they're there to basically help you and help the business get the most out of this particular project. So it's basically your user base. It's someone who welcomes change, typically someone who is an early adopter of the project that you're deploying, is excited about it. They want to see it be successful. They are very excited about what potential it brings for them, but not only them, there are teams as well. So they normally are welcoming. They normally are advocates of technology. So early adopters normally want the latest and greatest. They can't wait to get the latest version of a spreadsheet or the latest capability to design an automated process. So they normally love that stuff. And they also like to help other people. A lot of the early adopters, even some of the people in my classrooms that I see helping other people, I know that they're going to be the people that help nurture that project with all the other people that will may be struggling through the early stages of the project. So like I said earlier, they want it to be a success. They'll want a voice. Early adopters typically join on to the early adoption program because they want to have a voice in the way the business is changing. So they're invested, but they're also willing to sort of learn from the experience and also steer the experience towards a more positive outcome. They can also help you identify issues. And for any project that I've worked with, the moment you get the early adopters in, that's when the questions come in, that's when things come out of the woodwork and we start to think, hey, we didn't even think of half of this stuff. Thank goodness we have our early adopters to actually let us know that they've identified these potential problems. They can also help spread a positive message. It doesn't take much for someone to put a bit of a spanner in the works when it comes to the progression of a project. Something doesn't really gel for some person and they spread a bad vibe around the project. But you find that the early adopters can often maintain and nurture and keep a more upbeat message around your project. And the great thing is that that message is coming typically from a more neutral party. So if your colleague is saying to you, I can't wait to get into something like Office 365, that might actually be a sort of better thing coming from a colleague than from a manager that wants you to use Office 365. And basically, the early adopters make the going live in Office 365 happen. They are basically our agile part to our project deployment. So If you're thinking about going live with Office 365, start to think about who might be a good early adopter, people who reflect some of the points that we've just discussed. But you will need to provide them with some entities to help them with their particular role. You need to educate them on the basics of the solution that you're going live with. In our case, we're talking about Office 365, so you'll need to show them at least how to use it. There's no point in them being advocates for the technology and early adopters if they don't really know how to use it. So give them some essential training. Maybe create your own ad hoc training course. Pick out things that they'll need on a regular basis, like email, calendar, files, communications, anything that you think will be essential. And think of a location to basically talk to adopters and project managers. This could be something like an online community, something like could use something like Google Groups or Hangouts, or you could use a community site in SharePoint. Whatever resources you have available to yourselves, having a location to talk between adopters and the project team means that people's voices are being heard. So you need to have an open communication forum for discussions about the early adoption of Office 365. They'll gain confidence gained through basically practicing in the system. So if possible, you'll need to make sure that they can go live with Office 365 earlier than most other people so that they can get hands-on. Hands-on is how we get confidence. If we know how to do something, it's much easier for us to show other people how to achieve that as well. So hands-on practicing is very important. So make sure these guys get a chance to try things out before other people do. They'll also need a point of escalation for tough questions. Quite often, if you're put in a situation where you're saying, oh, you're the early adopter, people will come to you for questions, that does scare them a bit. They may have confidence in how the product works, but quite often they don't know the inner workings of the project, the release timetables, the elements that you probably might know about as a project manager. So effectively, we want to make sure that you give your early adopters a point of contact if they get any tough questions. So that might be the project team. So if they get a question saying, hey, when's Skype for Business going to be released, they can get back to someone and get an answer back to their original person that gave them the query. Now, what they'll also need, anyone who wants additional confidence in the system will know that they've got support. So that may come from the project team. It may come from resources that provide users with support, but we need to make sure that reflects the current product. So we need to make sure that our support and documentation on Office 365 is maintained. And finally, they don't need this, but I highly recommend you consider giving them a reward for their efforts. They're taking time out of their daily schedule, their working daily schedule, to provide you with a better go live with your Office 365 experience. So if you can reward them from their efforts, that will be fantastic. Sometimes it's as simple as giving them a little t-shirt for them to wear on the day you go live to indicate that they're a specialist in the product. Sometimes it's letting their manager know that they're incredibly helpful in the delivery of the project, and the manager can then think about maybe, rewarding them in one way or another. But at the end of the day, it's a kindness that has been granted to the project. So we should make sure that that's returned in favor. So let's get round to our case study. We know that early adopters can help us with the go live of our Office 365 migration. Let's talk about a business that actually did it. This case study is for a non-disclosed name of a company, but I can provide you with some basics about what the company has in regards to size and strengths. First of all, this particular company that was going live with Office 365 has 4,300 users going live across multiple sites across the United Kingdom. They had, of those 4,300 users, 145 early adopters, including the majority of users that were based in IT. It's important to train up IT, and we gave them a lot more comprehensive training. Now, IT gave us some fantastic feedback, and we'll talk about later how feedback evolved the delivery of this Office 365 system, and those early adopters almost transformed the project. And we'll, again, like I said, mention that shortly. So of 4,300 users going live, 145 were early adopters. And what they were doing is they were moving international sites from various systems to Office 365. The UK, for example, originally used Lotus Notes, and then they moved on to cloud services hosted by Google for Business. So they were currently using Google for Business before they moved to Office 365. So the argument there is that there wasn't as big a jump for them because they were already using cloud services. Other sites that were not based in the UK had Office 365 users, 2,000 in large, already using Office 365, but they weren't really using it properly. They got Office 365, and like so many businesses, they weren't really using it to its full potential, very lightweight use of an incredibly powerful product. So we wanted to make sure that they were skilled up as well, to make sure that when we go live with Office 365 across the entire company, the users that were already in Office 365 were skilled up so that they could get more success in their system as well. There were also about 5,000 users that were currently using on-premises technology. So as we discussed earlier on in the session, there are users that are still using their own services hosted by IT. So when they go to cloud-based services, there's going to be a big change for them as well. So the case study for this organization meant that we were uniting all of those particular offices around the world on a single platform and basically reconnect this segregated business by breaking down barriers by having every single part of the business on the same Office 365 tenant. Early adopters were to go live 2 weeks before the rest of the business with a mixture of volunteers from different departments as well as IT services. The Big Bang rollout for the rest of the UK would happen all at once, not step by step. This meant that whether you're based in Liverpool or Hayes or different locations around the UK, the problem is that the business had to tackle everyone in the UK going live. So all 4,300 users going live at once. We had to make sure we had early adopters on every single site. And this is an organization that works round the clock. So there needed to be shift workers that could provide the same level of support during nighttime shifts as well. So during the migration into Office 365, we had to migrate 2 million files, which is a huge amount. They also needed to take events from calendars and emails from the Google for Business products. There were some basic apps that were going to be migrated first, like the common things like mail, calendar, tasks and contacts, as well as things like OneDrive. But eventually the business would adopt in phase 2 other solutions like Delve, Sway, Planner, Power Apps Flow and Power BI. So many more powerful solutions coming, and I can't tell you how excited some of the users that were being taught about Office 365, the early adopters, were to hear about things like Power Apps and Flow. They're really excited to get to build their own data capture and automated processes straight from the web browser. So they were already invested from the start. So being an early adopter sounds quite like a very responsible role. So what were the levels of support provided for these early adopters? So the responsibilities before the go live were sort of handheld with the project team. So before go live, you'd basically join a global community with access to content and discussions. So discussions about what was going to happen, what the schedule was, who to contact, content like posters that you could put up around the offices, videos that you could watch, basically everything that they needed to comfort themselves with the knowledge and resources that they needed to go live. There were also pre-go live activities as well. It wasn't all community orientated. There were weekly phone calls for any early adopter to join in on so that they could coordinate their group efforts, everyone could catch up, ask important questions directly with the project team. They also, here's a real cool idea, they actually booked a room known as Basecamp. So all it needed was a meeting room to book out for the whole go live day, where that room is just as a drop-in clinic. So, you know, you'd have a few specialists in there, early adopters. Someone comes in and says, look, I'm struggling how to create an event to book this meeting room. Could you show me how to do it? And, you know, they would show them on their computer, say, thanks, that's exactly what I needed. And then they'd go away. So these base camps were made publicly known to other people so that on the day we went live, they would see these base camps and know where to go to ask questions. They were also asked to order t-shirts as well. So there were special t-shirts that were made up for any of the earlier adopters so that people could recognize them on the day. On the actual go live, the early adopters' responsibilities were to provide the drop-in clinics for questions and demonstrations from these base camps. They were also asked to do floor walking and also do shift covers for factory workers as well to make sure that we had cover around the clock for the first go live day. But afterwards, what would happen ongoing? We can't ask the early adopters to continually train people in the organisation. They're there to support with the go live and maybe act as an advocate for helping their team and other colleagues on an ad hoc basis. But they had inductions to the organisation for new starters. So the responsibilities of the early adopters were to, if there was someone joining your department and you're the early adopter, you would basically provide them with a 30-minute tutorial on how to use Office 365. This is one of the things that the business thought it failed with after they went live with Google for Business. They weren't really training anyone new who was coming into the business, and there was a little bit of a lapsed discovery of their cloud solution for new starters in the organization. And they also want ongoing support for the release of new technologies. So when the early adopters start seeing things like Delve turning up, they're going to think, right, I'm an early adopter and I don't know anything about Delve. How am I meant to resolve that situation? So the early adopters' responsibilities are to support the new technologies. So the business's responsibility is to make sure that the early adopters are educated in new functionality that they turn on in Office 365. So at this point, the business in our case study had identified their early adopters, 145 in total. They didn't really know anything about Office 365, but some of them were the go live team for when they went to Google, and they were very successful with that, and they wanted the same success again. They knew that that aligned to training these users. This is where combined knowledge comes into the books. We entered into the fray to basically listen to the business and understand exactly what they needed. We were there to deliver the education and the support for Office 365, not just for their go live, but after go live as well. So we worked with the project team to design a one-day class. This would be delivered to IT professionals, early adopters, and also personal assistants that would be supporting managers. So based on our first deliveries, we had our toughest critics to battle first. IT, my personal background as well, so I felt very at home with their IT team, understanding exactly where they're coming from and what they needed to know. As we delivered the session to IT, they provided us with some very important feedback which changed the course of the training. When we first designed the training course, no one considered whether they wanted it on hands-on. Hands-on meaning that the students can try out basic things in Office 365. We advised the team that for every single training course we'd need to create an account for a delegate, and the sort of process behind that can be quite labour intensive. But from IT's feedback, they said that because they sat for a whole day session watching demonstrations, they felt that it would be much better hands-on. We turned this around in a single day. So overnight, Combined Knowledge produced a demo facility which was available in the class the very next day. We worked very hard through the night to make sure that the next time we delivered that class, it had the basics to allow students to undertake hands-on labs or practice sessions. Now, as the training went on and on and on, more feedback came that people wanted more hands-on time. So then we started drafting challenges for students to do in the training courses as well. So we basically started to make it more hands-on. We gave students the opportunity to collaborate with each other in the environment during the training session, and also engage with the instructor as well, because everyone was using the same training environment. So over the course of about 3 weeks, we visited multiple sites across the United Kingdom, and we liaised with the project team that were in charge of the migration each time. So typically a member of the project team would lead in the session with an overview of how far the project has come, to answer any questions, and then they would basically come back in at the end of the session to answer any further questions from the early adopters. So the project team were part and parcel integrated into the training experience. They didn't want to take a step back. They wanted to be face to face with the early adopters to make sure all of their voices were being heard. And that was incredibly important. The questions asked during the session were documented by the training team. Every time someone asked a question, I wrote it down. Every time someone asked my colleagues a question, they wrote it down, and we brought those questions together onto a single feedback form. This actually started to show common ideas and questions that were coming up across the early adopters, which helped the project team identify things that either they weren't aware of or weren't aware was such a big demand. So this really helped people understand what the pulse of the project was in reality to the actual end users. So that was a bit of a discussion about the training. Now, I mentioned those questions. What were some of the questions that came back about Office 365? So quite regularly, we would be asked questions around what was the quota for mailboxes and what was the quota for things like OneDrive for Business. So people wanted to know how much storage they had in Office 365. So you get about 1 terabyte of information, slightly over that in OneDrive for Business. People wanted to know how to set up mobile phone notifications because they're factory workers. They want to be able to stay notified as they travel around on the factory floor. They were very interested in SharePoint. They wanted to know when SharePoint would be available to the organization. It wasn't part of phase 1, but it was coming in later. They also wanted to know about backwards compatibility for Excel files. Imagine that you're working with a supplier and they use an old version of Excel. They were worried that if they used the latest and greatest technology, but they might alienate some of their suppliers that might be using older technology. They also wanted to know how to tag an email as confidential. I guess that's an important one. How to switch between conversations and messages in webmail. So you've got the linked messages, or you can separate your messages into separate emails. They wanted to know how to undo a sent email. We've all done that one before. We sent an email and thought, oh no, I forgot the attachment, or I didn't mean to say that, and then you want to withdraw it. They wanted to know how to transfer ownership of the user's OneDrive. They wanted to know what the maximum attachment size was for emails, which is about 25 meg. They wanted to know how to set up out of office, signatures, message templates, and they wanted to know how to block someone on Skype for Business, which I guess we can all appreciate that there may be that one person that you just don't want to know that you're online. At the end of the day, it showed fantastic understanding of the Office 365 product, that we were getting questions specific to what we were teaching them. And they just wanted to know how Office 365 weighed up with their current solution and how to do their day-to-day tasks. So, after we answered those questions, after the project team and Combined Knowledge successfully delivered the training to the early adopters, we wanted to know how it was perceived. We provided surveys for every delegate that attended the training session, and 97 surveys were returned from the 145 audiences. Some of those sessions were delivered online, and we did provide digital training feedback as well, but it's harder to govern people to fill out training feedback if they're online. So the scores below are listed out of 10. So the overall session score was ranked at 9.3. So we had some very positive feedback from the overall session for every single aspect, like learning effectiveness, instructor knowledge, instructor enthusiasm, instructor answers to questions, and you saw some of the questions we had earlier, content clarity, and instructor organization. So whether the instructor comes in with his hair messy and saying, I forgot I had a course today. Luckily it didn't happen. So the overall learning effectiveness was at 8.9, which you've got to admit, for an Office 365 product that's so diverse, that's actually really good effectiveness for the delivery of the training. It's fantastic to see such a high number. Now, not all of the feedback is numbers and statistics. We grabbed some of the written feedback from these forms as well. So some of it was, it's great to see collaboration in action. Users were really excited to see each other working on the content. This one I love. I'll be required to teach others about Office 365. Now I will be able to do it well. That is an absolute win from a trainer. I absolutely adore that feedback. It's really good. I actually thought Microsoft was complicated. Today I learned it's actually simple. Now don't scoff at that comment. Some people do genuinely think Microsoft products are complicated. You've got client applications, you've got web versions of those client applications. And for someone who's new to it, it's not all that simple. So proving that is actually quite hard in some situations. A well-structured presentation, well, it's good to know that the format was working after we listened to the IT team and made it more hands-on. And that was proved by the session being very interactive, which is what the session evolved to be. Interactive session helped massively, so that's just emphasis there on how important it was to make it hands-on, because it wasn't to begin with. Great pace and delivery, best applications course I've attended in a long time. So that sounds like someone who does attend quite a bit of training, so that is quite important. This little one I quite like. This was basically someone who was providing their questions back to the project team, and this was a session that I delivered. And I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I am quite proud of that little bit of feedback there. Very honed and professional is pretty much what we were going for. So that was fantastic. But to be truthful, that project was released back in March and April. So it's a few months since then. So how do you keep the momentum? As businesses continue with going live with Office 365, you might be in this situation where you've gone live and you're still using it, or you're considering going live. But how do you keep that momentum after going live if you were successful? Or if you've already gone live, how do you keep up with the changes that Microsoft keep making in the Office 365 system? Well, effectively keeping the process going can't just be warranted by IT services. If IT are just basically going to be the call center for Office 365, they're going to be inundated by support requests and they're going to struggle to do their basic day-to-day activities. Basically, would there be enough budget to train most of the remaining thousands of users in your organization? Because we've only trained the early adopters. Could we train the others as well? Could we afford to have them out of the office for to learn these products rather than relying on IT to walk them through every single step? Well, technically, yes, we'd love to train thousands of users, but there's so many logistical problems with that. So keeping the momentum can't really be done by taking everyone out of the business and training them individually. Early adopters are one thing, the rest of the thousands of the organization are another. But let's actually just look at the cost of just training up one person if they are actually available to take the training. So a typical Microsoft Excel training course, beginner, is a one-day course at £360. Availability in July and October. So you pick between, well, July, you've got next month, then you've got October. Not a lot of availability, not really on demand, is it? Intermediary level, 2 days. You could do that in July and October, assuming they don't overlap on days. That's £751. And advanced level is 2 days, but that's in June, September, and December. So if you did this, you don't want to do that one. So then it's just September and October. But then if you're doing this, you don't want to do September, so then it's then December. So you've got very limited availability for the training, and look at the cost. 5 days out of the office, nearly £2,000. So at the end of the day, keeping that forward momentum, you might consider training, but obviously the costs of training are quite high, especially for an organization. We'd love everyone to be in a training class, but it's not always realistic. So that's where Combined Knowledge offered the company in this case study support and training through our products Support Plus and Training Plus. The idea about Support Plus is it's your call center for Office 365. As an example to this, if you had a problem with Office 365, you'd probably call up IT. And IT would walk you through it, and you'd feel a little embarrassed to call them back to say it still doesn't work or you didn't really understand, and then you get a bit frustrated. And IT probably don't want hundreds of people or thousands of people in the business calling up for basic things like how do I upload a file, how do I set up an alert. So Support Plus is integrated into Office 365, and for the client that we worked with, it offered them step-by-step guides on common activities, detailed references to learn how and why to do things, and video demonstrations to support them. It also includes computer-based training so that they could learn at their desks. They could email links to their colleagues, or IT could email them a link to certain topics if they wanted to support them more quickly. And it has a consistent high-quality feel in the product to make sure that every single topic has the same level of detail. This is maintained by a dedicated team who have access to a canary tenant to keep the content and product up to date. To take a brief look, let's have a quick look over here. So this is an Office 365 tenant that I'm signed into at the moment. And as part of the app launcher, you have the opportunity to add support and another product that we'll talk about, which is Training Plus. For an organization, we can add these apps to the app launcher by getting the business to deploy them, and then users can choose to pin those to their start menu, and then they can launch the product from here. This takes them directly to support, They might want to know how to do something in Excel online as an example, and they can click into this product. You may think there's a lot of products on here, some of which are rather dated. Combined Knowledge have been providing this product for quite a while, and they have support all the way back to Office 2007. So this product's been maintained over 10 years and is to a very high standard. The exciting part of this is that you would only really have access to the products that you're subscribing to. So if you're only using Office 365, you'd only see corresponding options for Office 365 as well. So you wouldn't see everything, you would just see the products that you had as part of Office 365, and you can pick and choose what you want to see. So let's learn a little bit about formulae and functions. So to learn a little bit about putting things together, I might want to create a quick formula. Do you call IT? No, you don't call IT. You don't call IT to say, hey, I need to know how to build a formula. So you can learn step by step how to do something. So it will tell you exactly what you need to do as each step. And it's got lovely little tips on the right-hand side to help you embed yourself a little bit further in that particular task you have. For most business users, the steps are all they need. I see the steps, I get back to work, but some people are thinking, well, actually, this doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. I don't know where to click. I don't know exactly why I'm doing this. So that's where the details pane comes in. So the details pane explains all the terminology, why you might use this and what the benefits are, and then in more detail highlights exactly on the page where you would actually be clicking and managing these particular elements. A video to support them also appears as well. People learn in different ways, and we need to provide them with the options to learn in different ways as well. So the video function doesn't have any audio to correspond with it. Why? Because in this particular standard, we're providing people with support, and they might need to do this in an open office. Having music and sounds and audio punching out there will be distracting. So these particular sections aren't really for educating people, more for getting them back to work. This is what I like to call the just-in-time support. Rather than calling a support team, you support yourself with steps, details and videos to get you back and working faster. But if we wanted to educate someone in Microsoft Excel, you don't say to them, right, go through these steps. There's only a couple of hundred of them. You'll learn Excel eventually. Just go through these hundreds and hundreds of different step-by-step guides and you'll eventually be a wizard. Well, not really, because they're not being educated in a very good structure. So what we offer users are an alternative. Remember, support is for just-in-time support. It means that they can get resolved issues faster. If they want to have on-demand training, well, that's when Training Plus comes in. So whereas Support Plus is accessible from the app launcher, we can also introduce Training Plus into the app launcher as well. So this provides you with on-demand professional full-length classes. They're done in high definition, so they're filmed at 1080p, and they're delivered by experts in the subject matter, delivering the exact content that your business needs directly to you. It's a cost-effective solution that allows students to study when they want to. They can reset lessons when needed if they didn't understand something. Training plans can be set up by managers to ensure that they've covered the content up to a certain standard. And HR inductions could basically include a couple of essential topics to get them familiar with Office 365. The content is maintained to reflect the current products, and if the product changes, we reshoot all of that content again. So let's have a look at some of these videos. I've only got a couple of minutes left, but let's have a look at Training Plus from the app launcher. So on our training dashboard, you can see some of the modern products like Sway, your calendar app, Delve, and Groups and Planner. We've also got things like Mail, third-party tools like Nintex. We've got Office 2016, including Word, PowerPoint, Excel. We've got People and Tasks, Video Portal, OneDrive, SharePoint, governance and planning for SharePoint, Skype for Business, Yammer, and we've got more products coming too, like Power Apps. We've got Flow coming, we've got Teams coming. So as Microsoft released more of these products, we're adding them into our experience. So let's go back to that Excel discussion earlier. So you want to learn a little bit more about Excel, you want to become more proficient. So if we go into Office 2016, You'll see that we've got options for the client versions of Excel 2016. We also have the web versions of these products coming very soon as well. So we've got an introduction, intermediary, and advanced education on Microsoft Excel. And to be quite honest, I could do with a little bit of this myself. So I'm going to go into Excel Intermediate. And I'll play some of this audio shortly, but the introductory sections will provide you with an overview of this particular module. What we're going to do, let's learn about a lookup function. So I think we've all used the VLOOKUP in Excel at some point or another. And what I'll do is I'll jump into the demonstration with Rob.
A couple of VLOOKUPs. So we're going to start off by going equals VLOOKUP open bracket. What I'm then going to do is put in what's described as the lookup value, which in this case is going to be the product ID. I'm then going to put in a comma and select the table of data. So in this case,
I'm going to take advantage of one of the things I don't get to do in real life, which is muting Rob. I can't put my hand over his mouth, it's frowned upon, but it's actually nice to do this in the video. So the way that these are produced is for an organization, you would have access to over 70 hours of content through Training Plus on Office 365. So that's a mixture of things like Microsoft Office, OneDrive, SharePoint, and users can pick and choose what they want to learn about. So we keep this content as up to date as we can. So for example, if something more modern was released in Microsoft Excel, what Rob would do is capture the demonstration. He would then shoot it on green screen, so he would stand in front of the demonstration and talk you through it, and then it would be published and then deployed. So we keep our content very much up to date. We want to make sure that you get the most modern experience from your Office 365 product, and this is how we can maintain the momentum after going live. After we go live, users want to be encouraged that they have the support so that if they need a quick question answering, they can go into the system and have support on demand in the product. If they need further training, if the business decides to implement Delve or Sway, people will start to say, well, when's the Delve training coming in? When's the Sway training coming in? And I still don't know enough about Microsoft Excel to teach other people about it. So people can actually just go into the product and start to learn on demand for the topics that are important to them. And we're finding that this isn't just important for businesses as well. A lot of home users are going into things like Training Plus so that they can learn more about how to be more effective with Microsoft Office tools as well. The fantastic thing is that you can potentially go with the Office 365 pack, or you could potentially pick and choose exactly what you want. Now remember, for our case study, the case study that we mentioned didn't go live with everything first. They had a phased release which included things like Skype and OneDrive. It also included Microsoft Office. It included Outlook components like Mail and Calendar. So they would just switch on the components of Training Plus for the products that they already have. And then later on, they would activate the other products as well. And we could work with you to basically release the Training Plus content as you roll out different functionalities for different parts of the business. Okay, so just a quick wrap up here. So we want to thank you very much from Combined Knowledge and AvePoint. We hope that you've enjoyed the free webinar series. If you need to contact us or learn any more about Combined Knowledge, our website is www.combined-knowledge.com. If you need to contact our sales team, it's sales@combined-knowledge.com. Now we'll get over to the questions in a few moments, but one thing I just want to mention very briefly, there will be a short 3-question survey at the end of the session, which is just a little bit about yourselves. So whether you've gone to Office 365, whether you're looking at whether you sort of what kind of aspects have you thought about with your Go Live program, whether you need any support. So if you could take a few seconds just to fill out the survey at the end of the session. It is only 3 questions. I know it's 3 questions because I sat next to the person that's creating the survey and I saw that they only created 3 questions. So I thought, well, that's a quick win for anyone. It's hardly any time at all. Okay. Right, so just before we sort of wrap up, I want to thank everyone who joined the session today. And thank you, of course, very much for your queries. I'll go through the queries very shortly. But from the Office 365 What's New webinar series and for myself, Chris at Combined Knowledge, thank you very, very much for joining the session today. And I'll turn my attention very shortly to your questions. Okay, so I've just got a question, sort of how, it's just basically quite a brief one. How about SharePoint? Good question. So in regards to SharePoint for Office 365, Microsoft are currently going through a process of, as you're probably aware, modernizing it. So there's a contrast between modern and classic experience that we at Combined Knowledge have to sort of provide the best of both worlds for. So when it comes to Training Plus and Support Plus for SharePoint, you'll find that we're trying where possible to create a modern and classic discussion. So I'll just go back into the product. So if we go into Support Plus and have a look at SharePoint Online, and go to libraries and lists and go into the side menu here, you'll notice that we've got a section for classic and a section for modern. So we know that certain things are changing. So lists, libraries, site content, new site pages are coming out. So as Microsoft Office 365 evolves and SharePoint evolves, some people will go with that movement and others won't. So what we can do is we can provide both experiences. So we do educate people in understanding in these training guides that they may be using classic or modern. We educate them on what that might look like and where to go if they need classic or modern support. So if we go into classic libraries, you'll notice that if we go to upload a document, we've got the classic user interface with steps, tips, details, and videos. If you're using the modern experience, then we would go into working with files, new files, uploading files, and then it will show the classic, and you can vary on the modern experience as well. So we try and split it off where possible, and Training Plus is no different. If we go into Training Plus, and we locate SharePoint, we will just go into working with libraries, and you'll notice we've got working with lists with new look interface with classic interface. So if we go across here, and I'll just mute that for a second, we cover both experiences. So if a business is basically using the admin center to lock people into a classic experience, which is not uncommon, most of the businesses that we're talking to at the moment, they haven't got a training scenario where they can actually just educate people on the new modern interface. They've already started with SharePoint. People are used to classic, and then moving everyone to modern is going to be a training requirement. So if they wanted to learn from Training Plus, they could actually pick to learn about the classic interface. But they've also got the luxury of modern as well. So if they wanted to, they could learn modern, and then maybe that will encourage the business to move over to modern. The important thing at the end of the day is that when it comes to modern and classic, we've got both covered. But remember, Microsoft are only going to be improving the modern experience. The classic experience is going to be stagnant. Now that's good because it means it's stable, but it's also bad because it will never actually get any of the sort of modern features. You may already notice that modern SharePoint sites collapse beautifully onto mobile phones, whereas classic, you just get a big scroll bar. If businesses are looking to sort of choose between modern and classic in SharePoint, they should really be starting to turn their attention to modern, because that's where Microsoft are going to be housing all of their improvements. So going back to Training Plus and Support Plus, we have to cover both because businesses are using both. So a business would be able to pick between classic or modern. So we cover SharePoint in both products. We cover SharePoint Classic and Modern in both products, and to quite a degree as well. So hopefully that answers the question regarding SharePoint. Just leave Rob talking in the background there. It amuses me, but I'll just sort of come back out of that again. Okay, just looking for, here there's, yes, thanks. Brilliant, thank you. I'm glad that answered the question. Okay. All right, well, what I'll do, so I'll just quickly go back to my slide earlier on in the session, which had my email address on it. So if you do have any further questions after the session is finished today, do drop me an email at chris.cassangina@combined-knowledge.com. Yes, I know it's a pain to type in, think how I feel, but that is my email address. I did ask for chris@combined-knowledge.com. I didn't get it, so it's full names or bust. So if you want to get in contact with me, You're welcome to get to me through LinkedIn. So if you add me on LinkedIn and just let me know that you're on this session, I'll add you to LinkedIn, and then we can chat through there. Or you're welcome to drop me an email address into my mailbox. So if you need any further questions from myself, do drop me a bell. Okay. I think we'll finish up there. So thank you all very much for joining the session today. Hopefully it was engaging and very useful. If you are looking for further information about Office 365, do check out Combined Knowledge's YouTube channel. This video will be going up on YouTube hopefully today. That would be cool if it went up today, but I'll have to do some editing and then I'll pass it to our media expert, and he's going to throw it up on YouTube because he's the one with the password, so I can't really do it myself. But we'll get this on YouTube. So if you did think the session was really cool and you want other people to see it, have a look at our Combined Knowledge YouTube channel and do pass the link around to your colleagues where possible. Until then, thank you very much, and on behalf of Combined Knowledge, have a very good day.